All right, let's get into a story that literally starts at rock bottom and shows just how much can change in 90 days. It's all about a guy who had completely given up until a single, simple idea kind of forced him to try again.
So meet Daniel. He's 29 and his life has just come apart. He's lost his job, he's cut off from his family, and he's living in this tiny empty room, totally convinced that this is it for him. He wasn't just down on his luck, He'd stopped fighting, he'd stopped trying. He was just existing. But then, one night, he's just walking, not really going anywhere, and he sees this little torn piece of paper taped to a shop window. It just had a few words on it, but it was enough. He saw this number, and it became this catalyst. It was a deadline. It was a reason to fight.
And this is really where the whole thing kicks off. It wasn't some big, detailed plan. It was just one powerful decision. So try. Just for 90 days. He actually went home, wrote the number 90 on a scrap of paper, and stuck it right on his wall.
I mean, his starting point was bleak. No job, no money, and worst of all, he had this belief that his situation was permanent. And that's the really dangerous part, isn't it? It's that mental trap where you think a temporary situation defines who you are forever. That note he saw, it created this tiny little crack in that wall of hopelessness. It wasn't some huge epiphany, but it planted a question in his head that he just couldn't shake. What if he actually tried? What if this little window of time was all he really needed? So that one question led to the very first and maybe the most important steps out of that darkness. And listen, for someone who had been doing absolutely nothing, these tiny little actions were huge. It's proof that thinking differently is one thing, but you got to follow it up with actually doing something different. His whole journey started with these incredibly small, almost laughably simple steps. Day one, all he did was get up and walk outside. That's it. But for Daniel, that was probably the hardest thing he'd done in months. And that's the key, right? Action creates momentum. He wasn't aiming to build a new life just yet. He was just aiming to get through the next few minutes. And meeting Marcus was so important. Marcus didn't grill him about his past. He just showed him how to work, how to build something. He taught by example, not by criticizing, and that gave Daniel the space he desperately needed to fail, and more importantly, to try again without being judged. Okay, so here's the crucial part. All those little steps, they started to add up. They started to compound. They weren't just random actions anymore. They were fundamentally changing how Daniel saw himself and, just as important, how other people started to see him too. And this just shows that shift perfectly, doesn't it? By day 24, he was a different person. He stood taller. He actually made eye contact. When he spoke, people listened. His self-worth was being rebuilt from the outside in, based on the solid proof of his own actions. And then came this moment, an offer from Ruth, a local business owner who'd heard about Daniel from Marcus. She saw his work ethic, his reliability, and this was the test. That old voice of self-doubt was screaming at him to run away, to say no. But for the first time, this new voice, built on weeks of small wins, was just a little bit louder. He said yes.
So he'd finally found some solid ground. He was feeling stable for the first time in, well, forever. But then, of course, a massive threat shows up, something that could destroy every bit of progress he'd made and send him right back to that empty room.
And this wasn't just some small problem. A huge company moved in, selling the exact same stuff as Ruth, but for way, way less. This wasn't just a threat to a business, it was a threat to the new life and the new purpose that Daniel had just started to build for himself. I mean, look at the numbers. The competitors' prices were so low, there was no way Ruth could compete. In just 10 days, more than half her customers were gone. It was pretty clear, if nothing changed, the business would be gone in a month. But instead of just giving up, Daniel came up with a plan. He knew they couldn't win a price war, but what if they fought on a different battlefield? One the big company couldn't even get to, their story, their truth. His strategy was to do the one thing a giant corporation just can't do: connect with people, one-on-one, like a human being. So he went back to the same streets where he used to feel totally invisible. But this time he had a mission. He started knocking on doors.
And those first few doors, they were a painful reminder of how he used to feel. The first person basically shut the door in his face, and that old, heavy feeling of, see, nobody cares, came rushing right back. This was the real test.
But then, on the fourth door he knocked on, a single yes changed everything. An older woman listened to his entire story, and she promised to come by the shop.
That one promise? It was just enough fuel to keep him going. One yes was enough to power through 10 no's.
And so slowly, day by day, door by door, his relentless effort actually started to turn the tide. This wasn't about one heroic moment. It was about the incredible power of just being consistent, of showing up again and again, especially when it would be so much easier to just give up. And his actions created this amazing ripple effect. The community chose the real story over the cheap price. Ruth's business was saved. In fact, it became stronger than ever. And then in the very last day, day 90, Ruth didn't just thank him, she asked him to be her full partner.
So, when you boil it all down, this story isn't about some kind of magic or luck. It's about this one single, repeatable decision. And that's really the core of it all, isn't it? Progress isn't about one giant leap. It's about the simple choice to take the next smallest step, especially when you really don't want to. Daniel turned absolutely nothing into a life with purpose and partnership. He didn't wait around for some big opportunity to fall into his lap. He built one day at a time, one door at a time. His story just goes to show you that the power to transform your life doesn't come from some huge heroic moment. It comes from the simple, repeatable decision to just try one more time. So the only question left is, what will you build with yours?